was 3 in the morning when the Oscar jumped in Mrs. Eleanor's bed for the first time in 12 years. That orange cat, known for avoiding any human contact in the asylum, was suddenly there, purring and snuggling next to her. 2 hours later, Eleanor left quietly, with Oscar still beside him. And that was not an isolated case. Oscar precisely predicted the death of more than 100 patients in that asylum in Rhode Island, United States. Doctors, nurses, family members, all were perplexed. How could a simple cat know something that even the most advanced medical equipment could predict? But Oscar is not the only one. In hospitals, nursing homes, and homes around the world, dogs and cats have shown a frightening ability to detect when someone is about to leave. And we are not talking about coincidences. We are talking about standards so consistent that science can no longer ignore. Today, let's dive into the most intriguing mystery of the animal kingdom, the supernatural capacity that our four-legged companions seem to have to feel the approach of death. Let's start with a story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about animals. In 2012, at the São Paulo General Hospital, a bitch mutt called Popcorn lived in the corridors of the cancer wing. The employees fed her, and she returned with joy and jokes. But there was something peculiar about Popcorn. Whenever she lay down beside the door of a specific room and refused to leave, nurses already knew that patient would not pass the night. And the most impressive? Popcorn never made a mistake, not only once in 3 years. What are these animals capturing that we couldn't? The answer may be in something that science has only begun to understand. When the human body approaches death, it undergoes deep chemical changes. Ketone production increases dramatically, cellular metabolism changes, and specific volatile organic compounds begin to be released through skin and breathing. For us, these changes are imperceptible, but for a dog with 300 million olfactory receptors, compared to our meager 6 million, it's as if the body is screaming. But is it just the smell? Dr. Jessica Vogelsang, a veterinarian and animal behavior researcher, spent 5 years studying documented cases of animals that predicted deaths. What she discovered goes beyond the smell. Animals seem to capture subtle changes in body language, minimal changes in temperature, and even variations in the electromagnetic field of the human body. It is as if they have access to a spectrum of information that we lost at some point in our evolution. Let me tell about the most extraordinary case I found. In a children's hospital in Toronto, Canada, there was a golden retriever named Hudson that was part of the assisted therapy program. Hudson visited the kids every afternoons, playing, making tricks, bringing smiles. But in December 2018, something changed. Hudson entered the room of little Lucy, a 7-year-old girl with leukemia who was responding well to treatment. Instead of playing as he always did, Hudson gently climbed into bed and put his head on Lucy's lap, remaining immovable for hours. The parents were touched but did not understand. The doctor said Lucy was improving. 2 days later, Lucy had a sudden complication and passed away. Her mother later revealed that afternoon with Hudson, Lucy said, "Mom, Hudson came to say goodbye to me." These are not isolated cases of animals with mystical powers. In 2015, researchers at the University of Kyushu, Japan, conducted a fascinating study. They put trained dogs in contact with blood samples from patients at different stages of terminal diseases. The results were amazing. Dogs were able to identify with 97% accuracy which samples belonged to patients in an advanced terminal state. But here is the part that creeps. They also correctly identified patients who would die in the next 48 hours, even when doctors had not detected any significant worsening. Science has a theory. When cells begin to die in mass, they release specific compounds like everyday and putrescin. Yes, the names are morbid, but they are real. These compounds are released in microscopic quantities, long before any clinical signal appears. For a dog or cat with its supernatural smell, it's like smelling rain hours before it drops. But, and when there is no physical contact, how to explain the cases where animals feel the death of their owners miles away? In 1918, during the Spanish flu, there are documented records of dogs that began to bind inconsolably, just as their owners died in distant hospitals. During World War II, the phenomenon was repeated on a massive scale. Dogs in England howling at the exact time when their owners fell into battlefields in France. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, Cambridge's biologist, spent 20 years documenting these cases. His controversial theory suggests that animals and humans share morphogenetic fields, invisible connections that transcend physical space. Looks like science fiction? Perhaps. But how to explain the case of Hachiko, the Japanese Akita who waited for its dead owner at the train station for 10 years? Or the documented case of a cat in Ohio that ran 300 kilometers to find the tomb of its owner, a place where it had never been before? You may be wondering, but why would animals do this? What is the evolutionary advantage of feeling death? The answer may be in our ancestral past. For millions of years, humans and canids have evolved together. Wolves that could best read human signs, including disease and death, were more likely to survive near our tribes. Those who could warn of dangers, including disease, were more valued and protected. It is possible that this ability has been selected and amplified through generations. Let me share something you may not know. Hospitals around the world are starting to take it seriously, very seriously. The Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles has an unofficial program where the team observes the behavior of therapy dogs. When a dog demonstrates unusual behavior with a specific patient, they discreetly increase monitoring. They have already saved lives detecting complications before symptoms appear. 3 years ago, I met Maria, a nurse who worked 30 years in ICUs. She told me about Pretinia, a cat who lived in the hospital where she worked. Pretinia had a habit of sleeping in a specific armchair in the corridor. But when she moved to the door of some room, it was a sign. Maria said, "At first we found it coincidence. After 50 times we stopped doubting. We got to the point of calling the families when Pretinia chose a door." And here is something that will make you stop to think. If you liked what you are discovering so far, leave a like to help more people know these amazing mysteries. And subscribe to the channel because every week I bring stories that will change your way of seeing the world. Activates the bell not to lose anything. But going back to our mystery, not all cases are about death. Many animals seem to feel when something is wrong long before it becomes fatal. In 2013, a woman in Florida named Patricia had a Labrador named Max. One night, Max began to smell in Patricia's left breast and push her with the muzzle. He had never done that before. Max was so persistent that Patricia decided to mark a medical exam. The diagnosis: early-stage breast cancer, too small to detect in self-examination. The doctor said Max probably saved his life. Cases like Max's are not rare. There are organizations today training dogs specifically to detect cancer. The accuracy? Greater than 90% in controlled studies. They can detect lit lung cancer, urine prostate cancer, skin smell melanoma. It is a silent revolution happening in medicine. And it all started because someone has decided to take the strange behavior of a pet seriously. But what about cats? The cats. They are even more mysterious. While dogs are expressive and obvious, cats are subtle. Oscar, the asylum cat I mentioned at the beginning, was not affectionate. He actively avoided people. But when someone was in the last few hours, Oscar appeared. Always. The doctors tried to find patterns. They verified if he followed the medical team, reacted to specific equipment, routine changes. Nothing. Oscar just knew. Dr. David Dosa, who wrote a book about Oscar, proposed a fascinating theory. Cats, being lonely predators, developed the ability to detect extreme vulnerability. In nature, this would help them identify easy prey. In a domestic environment, this instinct manifests itself differently. They are attracted to people in transition, perhaps because of an ancestral impulse to watch the group's vulnerables. There is a story that I need to share. It's about a retired firefighter named Jose and his German pastor, Thor. Jose was 82 years old and lived alone with Thor in a house in the interior of Minas Gerais. One morning, Thor began to act strangely. Ladia pulled Joseph's clothes, ran to the phone, and came back. Joseph felt good, but Thor was inconsolable. After 2 hours of this excitement, Jose decided to call his son, just for Thor to stop disturbing. The son insisted on taking him to the hospital. On the way, Jose had a heart attack. The doctor said that if he had waited another hour at home, he would not have survived. Thor knew. Somehow, Thor knew. And they are not just dogs and cats. Horses refuse to pass through places where fatal accidents will happen. Birds abandon areas days before natural disasters. Elephants gather around the sick members of the herd days before they died, as if they were holding a vigil. The whole animal kingdom seems to have access to information we lost. The question that doesn't want to silence: we also had this ability? Some anthropologists believe yes. Indigenous tribes around the world report feeling the approach of death. Shamans describe to see changes in the aura of sick people. Has our dependence on modern technology and medicine disconnected us from primitive instincts that previously protected us? A study from the University of Vienna discovered something intriguing. People who grew up with a strong connection with animals, farmers, veterinarians, coaches, show greater ability to require when something is wrong with people close. It is as if living with animals reactivated dormant circuits in our brain. And now, I want to take a special invitation. If these stories are touching you, if you are discovering a world you didn't know, consider becoming a member of the channel. With any value in the thanks too much, you help produce more content like this. Deep investigations into the mysteries around us. Each contribution allows you to bring more stories, more research, more answers to the questions that fascinate us. But there is a side of this story that few say, the emotional weight for animals. Imagine constantly feeling the fragility of life around you. Dr. Temple Grandin, famous for his work with animal behavior, believes that many animals in hospital environments develop a form of post-traumatic stress. They feel death approaching, form bonds with people who will soon depart, and repeat this cycle indefinitely. There are reports of therapy dogs that needed to be retired because they began to demonstrate signs of depression. Cats on nursing homes who stop eating after predicting many deaths. It is as if the weight of knowing was too much for them. This leads us to a deep reflection. If it is difficult for them, who follow instinct, imagine for us if we had full awareness of this ability. Perhaps that is why evolution has deprived us of this gift. Or perhaps it is not evolution, but our own unconscious choice of not seeing, not feeling, not knowing. Because living knowing exactly when each journey ends may be too heavy a burden to carry. But there is beauty in this mystery too. When an Oscar tangled next to someone about to leave, when a dog refuses to leave the sick owner's side, when a cat silently watchful a hospital door, they are doing something deeply human, or perhaps deeply animal. They are saying, "You're not alone. I am here. I feel your passage and honor you with my presence." By 2020, during the pandemic, there was a dramatic increase in reports. Pets detecting COVID-19 before testing, dogs barking to asymptomatic people who then tested positive, cats avoiding family members days before symptoms appear. The University of Pennsylvania is conducting the largest study ever done on the subject, with preliminary results suggesting that animals can detect viral infections 48 to 72 hours before the first symptoms. This opens revolutionary possibilities. Imagine a future where your pet is your first line of medical defense, where a different bark or insistent meow leads to tests that save lives, where the ancestral wisdom of animals complements our advanced technology. I met a veterinarian, Dr. Anna, who told me something fascinating. She said, "I spent 20 years treating animals, and the most important lesson I learned was not about them, it was about us. Animals do not fear death like us. They feel it coming and accept it. Perhaps their true gift is not to predict death, but teach us not to fear it, and that can be the key to everything. When an animal approaches someone departing, it does not bring fear or panic. He brings calm, presence, acceptance. How many reports are there from people who departed quieter because an animal was by your side? How many families found comfort to see that their loved one was not alone in the final moments? I remember a letter I received from a listener. She told about her grandmother, who was terrible fear of death. In recent days, the family cat, a surrounding Siamese called Prince, has not left his side. The grandmother, who was always afraid of dying alone, left holding the prince's paw with a smile on her face. The granddaughter wrote, "Prince gave her what none of us got, the certainty that the passage would not be lonely." Stories like this make me wonder if we don't interpret everything wrong. Perhaps animals are not predicting death. Perhaps they are fulfilling a holy ancestor role of guardians of the passage. In many ancient cultures, animals were seen as psychopampos, guides between the worlds. The Egyptian Anubis, the Greek Cerbero, the dogs of the Aztec Xolotl god. Is it a coincidence that so many independent cultures have associated animals, especially dogs, with the passage between life and death? And here I need to ask, have you ever lived something like this? Your pet has already shown to know something you didn't know. Have you acted strangely before something important happens? Leave your story in the comments. I really want to know if you have witnessed this mystery. Share mainly if your pet has already saved a life or brought comfort in difficult times. These stories need to be told. What science knows so far is just the tip of the iceberg. Each study reveals new layers of complexity. Dogs that detect epileptic seizures minutes before they happen. Cats that identify dangerous sugar falls in diabetics. Horses that feel panic attacks before the first symptoms. It is a universe of possibilities that we barely begin to explore. But perhaps the most important is not completely understanding how it works. Perhaps the important thing is to honor this gift that animals offer us. When your dog stares at you, when your cat suddenly changes behavior, when any animal shows unusual insistence, stop and listen. They may be trying to say something their words do not reach. We live in a time where we trust machines more than in instincts, where a blood test is more credible than millions of years of evolution. I am not saying to abandon modern medicine. On the contrary, I am suggesting that perhaps the answer is in the union of both worlds, the accuracy of science with the wisdom of instinct. Imagine how many lives could be saved if we took seriously each time an animal demonstrates unusual behavior. If instead of ignoring or finding cuddly, we investigate. If we were our animals as the sophisticated detectors they really are, the future can be extraordinary. There are already projects using artificial intelligence to decode disease-related animal behavioral patterns, cameras that monitor pets 24/7 and warn of subtle changes that may indicate health problems in the owners. It is technology finally reaching what animals always knew. But deep down, within each story, it is not about prediction or detection. It is about connection. It is about the invisible wire that connects all life forms. It is about the fact that in the most vulnerable moments of human existence, we are not alone. There are attentive eyes, worried muzzles, gentle paws remembering that we are part of something bigger. Oscar, the asylum cat, died in 2022. In his 17 years of life, he has comforted more than 100 people in his last hours. The asylum team said that in recent days, other cats have begun to demonstrate the same behavior, as if Oscar had passed on his legacy, as if you knew your work needed to continue. And maybe that's the greatest lesson. It doesn't matter if we completely understand how it works. It doesn't matter if science can explain every detail. What matters is that when we need it, when the journey becomes too difficult to face alone, there are creatures willing to walk with us, without judgment, without fear, only pure presence. The next time your pet acts strangely, stop, note, listen to more than your ears, feel with more than your reason. Because at that moment, you are not just owner and pet. They are two beings connected by the oldest and most sacred mystery of life, the ability to feel, to know, to be present when most matters. And if you still have doubts about this phenomenon, I leave a final reflection. In a world where we fight so much to understand death, where we fear it and avoid it at all costs, animals show us another way. They stare at her in front, without drama, without denial. They just know, accept, and accompany. Maybe just perhaps they are not showing us that they can predict death. Perhaps they are teaching us how to live with her conscience. And this, my friends, can be the biggest gift that our four-legged companions have to offer us. The wisdom that death is not an end to be feared, but a passage to be honored, and that no passage needs to be lonely when there is enough love to share the way. If this video touched your heart, if you made you look differently at your pet, share. Because somewhere, someone needs to hear they are not alone, that there are mysteries in this world that science does not yet explain, but that our hearts always knew, and that sometimes the answer to our biggest questions is in the silent look of an animal that has chosen to walk by our side. Until next time, and remember, the greatest mysteries of life often have four legs and a heart that tune with ours.